Hi, I'm Claire, and today I'm going to be doing 3 short reviews of different comic book titles. First, we've got Black Science Volume 1, How to Fall Forever by Rick Remender, Matteo Scalera and Dean White, and that is published by Image Comics. Now, this is a story about this maverick anarchist scientist called Grant McKay, who has invented this kind of pillar-like machine that can travel through dimensions. But on its maiden voyage it breaks and McKay is kind of stuck with his crew, which includes not only his boss and his mistress but also his children, and he can't find the way home. So basically they go hopping from dimension to dimension on the way home, trying to find the right world to repair the machine and to find the person who sabotaged it in the first place. Now, I got this book because I'm quite fond of parallel universe stories. I used to be a big fan of Sliders when that was on back in the day. As far as that aspect is concerned, it was really great. We go to 4 different worlds in this book and they're all quite different. They have really interesting creatures and cool technologies, and of course the meet your alternate self trope is also addressed. I thought the character dynamics in here were quite interesting. No one is really all good or all bad except for Grant McKay's children, who are there completely by accident, and really the only thing that everybody can agree on is to try and protect the children. The art style here is very detailed and I liked it in general, although the color palette is quite dark with a lot of high contrast, and there are some quite harsh black lines. I don't really know how to explain it. I think the stakes in the story are really high and the art style matches well with that. So I can see how it works for the book, but it's not my favorite art style. One thing that did really bug me about this book is that there's quite a bit of narration in it. I don't know if you can see, but this is one of the kind of early pages and there are a lot of these kind of square boxes where it's not in fact characters talking to each other, but it's just the story kind of being told, and it's in the voice of one of the characters, so it's not completely an external narrator, but I still find it less engaging than seeing conversations. There is a very long escape chased by monsters scene that opens the beginning of the book, and almost the entire first issue is being taken up by that scene, and it's all narrated. It's only when you get to the last 4 or 5 pages of that first issue that you get several characters meeting at once and talking about what actually is going on at the moment. So it's not the most engaging because you don't know the characters as people yet, you just know that there's a human running from a monster. And yes, you want to root for that person to not be eaten, but you don't really know why you should care apart from just, I don't want this person to die. Overall, I liked it alright. It's probably a kind of 3-star read for me. I would keep reading the series if I could borrow it from a friend or borrow it from the library, but I probably won't be buying any more of Black Science. Next, we've got Ody-C, Of the Far Ithaca by Matt Fraction and Christian Ward, out from Image Comics as well. Now, this is a retelling of Homer's Odyssey set in space with a gender-bent crew. This book opens at the end of a war that lasted for a century, and now that the planet Troia 7 has been defeated, Odysseia and her warriors can go back home to Ithaca. But obviously this is a journey through the stars that is going to take them a very long time. I settled down to read this the way that I would a quote-unquote regular comic book, which is kind of relaxed thinking that it wouldn't be too taxing a read, and boy was I wrong. This isn't a particularly easy read. The fact that it's a retelling of the Odyssey does help if you kind of know the broad lines of the story. There are a few things in this book that make it a little bit more difficult to follow than a quote-unquote regular comic book. The first thing is the art style, and you can see from the cover that it's really colorful, but it's also really complicated. I don't know if you can see, oh, focus. Yes, there you go. You can see it's just so detailed, and there is so much to see. I don't actually want to show you too much just in case it gets a little bit spoilery, but just look at these colors. Look at how busy the page is. And that, I think, is really something that makes it so that you could probably kind of go and look at it over and over again and find out small details that you might have missed the first time. There is a bit of narration in it, just like in Black Science. However, it's not a character narrating what they've been doing. It's more of an external narrator, and the voice of the narrator is very lyrical, very poetic, and it kind of feels very appropriate for it being the Odyssey, even if it's in space. Just to give you an idea of what I mean when I say there's quite a bit of lyrical language going on there, this is when they are finally leaving the planet of Troy 7. Leaving behind the last century, leaving behind all their dead and their loss, Paris, the coward and killer and thief. Here where Celis last stood, here brave Hector was bodily disgraced in death. Here where so many great women died, 3 ships leave Troy's remains, 3 adventures now start. 3 great heroes begin their last Odyssey. Finally, I will say the story involves quite a bit of machinations by the gods, just like the original, and there are a lot of secrets and plots going on, and so you don't really necessarily know what's going on all of the times, because you have an inkling that the gods are hiding something and that there's something else that's being left unsaid. As we finish this volume, there's obviously quite a bit more of the story of the Odyssey to go, and there are some good plot threads that are being put in place within this book, so I would really like to continue with the series and see where it's going. Finally, I have Terminally Illin Volume 1, Chaos in Manhattan, by Kaylene Andres and John Solo. This is out from Last Gasp, and this is a review copy that I got from the distributor Turnaround UK. This is a comic book about cancer. One of the authors, Kaylene Andres, was diagnosed with a very rare form of bone cancer when she was 23, and she had to put her life on hold to go through treatment. And one of the things that she did whilst she was having treatment is she was writing this blog about her experiences with cancer, and it was called Cancer is Hilarious, which is the byline at the top of the book here. This book isn't a compendium of blog posts with some illustrations for them. There are some extracts of the blog in it, but it is a fiction. It's basically a story with Kaylene herself as the main character, but when she goes in for her first day of chemo, it kind of turns into this fantasy, and she ends up being inside of her own body fighting cancer as if it were a bunch of different monsters, and she's trying to kick its ass. I thought it was a little bit weird at time because the book opens with some things that are clearly not fiction, things that are clearly from Kaylene Andres' life, like the way that her blog got its name. I'm not really used to reading a lot of like autobiographical narrative nonfiction, and particularly not in the form of a comic book when it then goes into fiction. So it is a little bit of a weird one, but it was a really interesting story, and it was cool to have the insights from a person who's a cancer patient themselves. This is the first part of a planned trilogy, so obviously it's just the beginning of Kaylene, the character's journey, where she decides that she's not going to let cancer take her down, and she's going to fight back. Wasn't very fond of the art in this book. I'm not really an artist, and I can't really describe what it is that kind of bothers me about it. The color palette made me a little bit uneasy, and I think that was probably the point, because a lot of the coloring that I didn't really like was in the part of the book where Kaylene is inside of the body, and I'm assuming it's not meant to be a comfortable environment because it's a body that's being, you know, attacked by disease. So that makes sense. However, I've got to say, there's a page somewhere in here where there are some black and white drawing right here, and I like those a lot better. I think those look a lot better to me. It's still something that I'm glad that I read, but for me, definitely the appeal of this is the story and the fact that it's a personal story from a cancer patient, that they are putting their own point of view across. So that's it for these mini reviews of comic books. I hope you enjoyed hearing about those 3 titles. Let me know if you have any questions or if you've read any of these books, and if you have any comic book recommendations, let me know. I'll have to try and see if they have it at my library. If you'd like to see more from me, check out the sidebar right here for more book reviews. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more videos from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.